Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we will be continuing the How to Customize a Clone series. These are the paints that I'll be using, they will also be listed in the description. So let's do the helmet. I'm using this helmet that I 3D printed using files from DS Artwork and More's Patreon, also listed in the description. 3D prints can often be left with blemishes such as layer lines and support scars, so the first step is to identify them and then using a sanding sponge will smooth them out. This video has ended up being much longer than I expected, but I want to make sure that you see the whole process, as there are many steps in which you will see where you just got to trust the process and it will all work out fine, so some clips have been sped up to make the viewing experience more engaging. But just sit back, relax, and enjoy watching the process of how to make a custom helmet. After sanding, I use this brush to just get rid of all of the dust, and then I'll show you how it looks. And here you go. The main areas that needed sanding was the bottom because of the support scars, and then there was a few layer lines on the top of the dome. Now that I have a nice smooth and clean surface, we're now ready for priming. So I'm going to pop it on a stick. I'm using the end of an old paintbrush which I've stuck some blue tack to, and this will give us an easy way of rotating the helmet while spraying the primer for a nice even coverage all around. And of course, like the last video, we're using the High Coat White Primer. And it was actually raining the day that I recorded this, and so I didn't manage to record myself spraying it, but here's how it looks with 3 layers of primer. So let's start painting. We'll be starting with the Vallejo blue, and it's the same blue that we used on the body in the previous video. And the reason again why I'm using a bottled blue here rather than a mix to get the accurate colour is so that I can have consistency, as this was recorded on a separate week. So dab out a small amount into your paint palette, and then add in 2 drops of thinner so that you get a nice smooth coverage, and again we're going to have to do 2 to 3 layers of this depending on how it's looking. And make sure you mix the paint and the thinner really good. We're going to start with the front facing lines, starting with the chin first. And while I do paint this and try and be as accurate as possible, you're going to see that it's not that accurate. I'm going to have to go in and refine a lot of the details. It's pretty difficult to paint on camera due to the angle that I have to hold it at. Most of the time I'm holding the head or the figure right up to my face so that I can see every part of it. But on camera it's a little bit more tricky, so this is going to be a very sloppy paint job. But I think that's probably for the best, because not everyone is going to be an experienced customizer, and so this should give confidence to people that have just started. Like in the previous video when I painted the lines on the body, the most important thing to keep in mind when painting this part is to have an even width across the lines. You can see here I missed the mark and got a bit of blue paint on the black band area, but don't worry about that, we'll be painting over it later. So that's the first layer on the stripes done, and now we got to move on to the fin. When painting the sides, just try and hug the fin as much as you can with the paintbrush and just follow the sculpt. So now that all of that's done, I'm moving on to the second layer to try and bulk up this colour a little bit more, and we want to have a nice flat looking blue. And here's how it looks with 2 layers of blue applied, and I think that's all that we need here. So the next step is to clean up this sloppy paint job using a scalpel blade. This is the same process from when I weathered the body in the previous video. We're just going to scratch away the paint and make all of these lines look nice and even. And here's how all of that blue looks now that it's been refined. It's looking much more uniform and more like the shape that we were aiming for. Now we're going to continue using the scalpel blade and do the same thing, but we're doing the weathering now. So scratching away at all of the edges and creating some scuffs and some scratches across the paintwork. And that's all of the blue scratches done. And when you're doing weathering at this scale with the scalpel blade, just try and remember the 1/12 scale you're working in. Keep all of the scratches small enough to look convincing. Now let's paint in the black details. We're going to use the Vallejo black and a drop of thinner. And it's important to use thinner here because you want the paint to be able to just seep into the crevices and be able to highlight the sculpt more, because you're really going to be using the sculpt to do all of the painting for you. Again, I'll be trying to paint it as accurately as possible, however you will see that not everything is accurate, and we're going to have to go in again and refine some of that detail with the scalpel blade. Now, the most intimidating part of painting the helmet, the dreaded black band. When painting this bit, just try to make sure that your brush is gliding across the sculpt. Take advantage of the fact that the band is a part of the sculpt and just try to very lightly highlight that raised part. You can see I missed my mark with part of the band. Don't worry about it though, because again we can just use the scalpel blade to scratch away any mistakes. When painting the vent lines, they are already sculpted into the helmet, so you just need to make sure that the paint seeps into the sculpt, and any paint outside of the sculpt will be easy to scratch off later. That's all of the black details done, and so now we're going to do the grey infill on the helmet band. With this part, you again just want to let the sculpt do all of the work. Just paint around the inside of it, and it will just seep into the sculpt, and hopefully none of it will be left outside. But again, this is another easy thing to fix with the scalpel blade later. In the reference art for this 501st Phase 1 Trooper, this part is actually painted blue. However, with the live action to Clone Wars translation, it's kind of tricky to figure out what belongs and what doesn't. But in my opinion, in a live action setting, this part would be painted grey, as the rest of the Phase 1 regular troopers have this part painted grey. So that's all of the details applied in a very sloppy way, and we're going to go ahead and clean this all up in a moment. When it comes to the mouth, you'll see that in Attack of the Clones, they actually have grey bits painted on their mouth. However, when it comes to the Phase 1 troopers, I personally like to leave it black because I think it's a much cleaner and slicker look. And it also makes them look a little bit more unique compared to the Phase 2 troopers, in which I do paint those grey bits. And that's one fully refined paint job. It is important with the helmet to just trust in the process. There are so many tricky details to be able to achieve with a paintbrush, you just have to trust that any mistakes can be cleaned up with the scalpel blade. But we're not done yet. Going back to the black, and this time not using any thinner, we're going to weather the figure using the dry brush technique. The same as how I did the weathering on the body, we're just going to scuff along all of the hard edges of the sculpt. the next step is to use a more fine detail brush with a sharp point and go in and do all of the smaller scratches. Then, once all of my scratches are painted, I go in again with the scalpel blade and I refine any of the scratches that look too big at this scale. You want to make sure that all of this weathering looks within the 1/12 scale. Finally, let's do the finishing touch. We're using Vallejo Scarlet Blood and we're going to go ahead and paint that red light on the bottom of the fin. And voila! One fully painted Phase 1 501st Clone Trooper helmet. Ready to go on the body in the next video, where we're going to go ahead and assemble all of the parts and apply the finishing coats, such as the matte clear lacquer and the gloss for the varnish. I hope this video has helped any aspiring customizers out there to get into it, and don't be afraid of the intimidating details that are involved with painting a helmet. It's so easy to clean up any mistakes with a scalpel blade, there's no reason to not give it a try. So thank you so much for watching everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video and found it informative. Please like and subscribe to the channel for more content. The next part will be assembling and finishing. So hopefully I'll see you in the next one.